VideoOut, which has been, how many years? Tell us a little bit about VideoOut, like how it got started, how many years it's been going, what you've been up to.
So we started in 2016 with a singular mission, and that was to amplify LGBTQ voices for advocacy and education. So since then, we've traveled all around the United States. So far, there's around 300, maybe 350 stories in our library. And we didn't really know this in the beginning, but now we are focused on the hyper-local community, places like Hueytown, Alabama, which is where I'm from. And
that is local.
That is local, yeah. We go to those places to amplify voices because those places don't have queer affirming programming. So I felt alone, I felt like nobody was like me, wanted to kill myself, and then I heard a story. I heard Cliff Simon's story in 2006. So I recorded Cliff's story in 2014, and I was like, I'm gonna do this story. And that was the birth of VideoOut.
My name's Amy. I came out 4 years ago because it was right around the time that gay marriage was legalized, and a lot of my family members were saying things that I didn't think they realized they were talking about me. And I figured it was finally time to let some of them decide whether or not they wanted to know me anymore. And ever since then, I felt so lucky and grateful to be a part of the queer community, which is a family that I never even realized that I would get to have the kind of love that comes from this. So I'm extremely honored to get to stand here tonight. All right. The more people that's happiness for y'all, because y'all family. The more people I meet, the more I realize that the most common thread between us all is storytelling. Both the ability to tell a story, but also the incredible, desperate want to listen. We are exposed now to more stories than ever before, and the stories are becoming more diverse and intersectional, revealing the truths of so many groups of people that have often been ignored or overlooked. We are finally seeing in a big way the types of stories that reflect who we are as a living, breathing culture. And that is why I'm so excited to be here tonight, to introduce you to these incredible humans with such wonderful stories to be told. I think that having nights like this and the documentation that Jordan has been doing with VideoOut is so valuable for so many reasons, but for these 2 reasons specifically. First, because there are people here who need to see themselves reflected back through the stories that will be told, through the vulnerability, the beauty, and the specificity of each individual storyteller. Perhaps you have felt alone, and this will give you the opportunity to realize that there is someone else who knows what you're going through, and that they are your community, and they're here for you to lean on. And second, because there are people who might otherwise have no idea what we're going through, and this gives them the opportunity to have a glimpse into our lives as queer people and learn. Just this past week, I was talking to a coworker, and she broke down sobbing because she had been thinking of Pride this whole time as this big party, and she had only just realized that it's a movement. That was a moment for me. And honestly, in that moment I realized we need more people to just be on our side. And it was amazing that she was telling this to me, and that she finally, after living in New York for so long, sees Pride as a movement. And she's on our side, and it's not just about us. She was realizing that it's about everyone, and so those people also need to hear these stories. And that's why I think this documentation especially is so valuable, because it's amplifying them. As we've been preparing for this evening, I have read or heard Jordan say the words, "I love you," so many times to every single person participating. And it's honestly to the point that it's been a little bit jarring. I'm not told that I feel like I'm a very loved person, and yet I'm not told that I'm loved that much.
I love you,
Amy. I really know. And we talk about loving each other, but in the midst of so much hardship and terror, having to hear that another one of our trans family members has been killed, or that a law has been passed that makes it so that it is hard for us to simply go to work, it is easy to lean into anger. Jordan has reminded me that while anger is absolutely allowed and necessary, the wellspring from which it all flows must be love. And I'm really grateful for that. Thank you. So, with all of that in mind, I am so thrilled to get to spend this evening with all of you, loving on you and sharing the love of all of these incredible storytellers as they tell their very, very perfect stories. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to be kicking off our night with our very first storyteller. Ashton is a performance artist, a dancer, and an actor who has been telling other people's stories through the work that they do, but is now ready to tell their own. When I asked Jordan why he asked Ashton to perform this evening, he said that Ashton is a magical human being that is 1,000,000% love and heart. And after getting to know Ashton, I can say that that's true. And I know for a fact that after their story, you will absolutely agree. So let's give a warm welcome to Ashton.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. As cliche as this lyric, this phrase, this metaphor may be, it has stuck with me my entire life. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Okay, what exactly does that mean? I grew up in the South, Houston, Texas to be exact, in a very conservative, religious family. My community was full of machismo. I'm Puerto Rican and Black, and African American and Puerto Rican. So rooted in this culture that I grew up in was this ideal that men needed to be a certain way, women needed to be a certain way. Gender roles were very clear and very assigned, and if you didn't show up to church every Wednesday and sometimes twice on Sundays in your assigned gender roles church drag, you would be condemned or exiled. It would not be a good look if you didn't show up how you needed to be. So rules were set, rules were in place, but at the same time, there was this duality that we were all being told from our youth. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. No matter how you were, you should shine that light. So I'm getting this double message, this community that is so infused and instilled with love is also, when I walk down the street and I'm swishing a little bit, it is not acceptable. From an age where I don't even know where that switch is coming from, but it is instilled in me, and that is just me. If I'm lisping or singing a little bit too high, that's not what you're supposed to do. But this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. So what I had to do from a very young age was kind of set out this light that was fabricated, that was not rooted in me, and tuck away this natural light that I had that was feminine, that was simply me, that other people did not accept and did not like, which was very, very tough. But, in the Christian culture, in the Catholic culture that I grew up in, you just put a good face on. That light that I had, I didn't understand where it was coming from. I needed to figure out what this light meant to me. So fast forward, as I'm living this like double life, living this life of like dualities, going out and saying that I'm one way, but knowing in my heart that I'm another way, I find that, performing and theater is a place that is rooted in truth for me. I take on these other hats when I go out, and I could be these other people and exist through these other characters, but I still didn't know myself. What was lovely for me is I got to go to theater camp when I was younger, and this is the first time that this theme of light came back to me. I remember walking into camp and seeing so many different types of people all across different spectrums and genders and everything. They were so loved and accepted, and everyone in my eyes, I remember stepping into camp, and everyone was glowing. And I was like, I want to live through this. Like, I want to be just like all these other people. So going on, I would we all gained really close relationships and everything. And I fell in love for the first time with everyone, several different people. And then I returned home, and I had this feeling, that I actually was shining. I was glowing. I didn't know where this was coming from, but these were my people. These people that were uninhibitedly themselves. And when I returned home, I had to tuck that away and present this falseness once again, that I knew what this light was, and these rules that are in place, what a man is supposed to be, what a woman is supposed to be, I need to live by those same rules to survive. But I had a friend, my best friend Milo, one of the first day of school of coming back from camp. He looked at me and said, honey, you're glowing. Something's different about you. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you've got your light back. We'll talk about it when you're ready. And I was like, okay. Fast forward again. We're going along, and I remember this night so specifically, so I would always drive Milo home. Side note, Milo now works for the Trevor Project, which is really great. I was driving Milo home over the lake, and he was like, take the long route. We gotta talk. I was like, all right, cool, okay, we'll go. Me, myself, just timid. What do you want to talk about? He's like, pull a car over towards the lake, and we're just gonna sit and look at it for a bit. And I can see the sun coming up over the horizon. There's the light again. It's coming towards me. I don't know why. And in that instance, Milo decides to come up to me. And it was a really beautiful moment. He was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I am gay. And we're not going to make this about you right now, but I know and I feel that a part of your life has to do with your queerness. And I was like, oh! What is this? What is happening? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I like people. Because I do. that is part of my essence. In that moment, I was talking to him about, the relationships I had at camp, and these other people who just were so finite in their femininity or their masculinity when they were told otherwise, or the society is telling them otherwise. It was so beautiful to me. And he was like, that's great and all, but what are you gonna do and tell how are you gonna tell your family? And I was like, I don't know how to do this. This is not what we're taught. This is not the rule. This is not the rules. This is not the basis. It is unacceptable. So fast forward. Then, right before I left to go to college, I decided to come out to my mom. And every morning my mom would wake up to go to work at 4 a.m., super dark outside. So I decided, my flight's later that night, I'm gonna tell her that morning. I rush into her room, hide under the blanket, in the darkness. Of course, here comes this darkened light again. I shut out the lights, and I'm like, Mom, I have to tell you something. And she's like, what? I gotta go. And I was like, okay, but I need you to know that I like people. And she's like, okay, what does this mean? You need to figure something out. She's like, choose one. And I was like, I don't think that's possible for me. She was like, listen, we're not telling your grandparents, we're not telling the rest of the family because they are not, like, it's unacceptable, and we can't live this way. You can't live this way. You need to make up your mind. And she was like, this is you and God. Like, you need to talk to your grandparents, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there in the dark under this blanket like, well, I did it. And so then I leave, and I go to college, and I'm like, all right, cool, this is my chance to, like, start anew. Leave this darkness of my life behind and find my light. But when I get to college, it's not different for me. I'm still very, like, sheltering of myself. I'm still hiding this light within of my queerness that I can't access. I still don't understand it. Why is that? I don't know yet. So one of my favorite teachers gave us an assignment, like a third week of school, to write a letter to someone who was, like, very prominent in our lives. And I was an overachiever, and I wanted to write 3 letters instead of 1. One was to someone that I fell in love with at summer camp, one was to my mom, and then one was to this asshole that I hate, so I threw that one away. And our professor wanted us to read one of the letters aloud, the one, like, the letters aloud that meant the most. So I decided not to read the one to my mom because I felt like that was too much for me. It was like a vulnerability that I was, like, not ready to access because I was like at this point still trying to, like, finesse and, like, discover who I was. So I tucked it away in one of my journals, and I just read the thing that I wrote about the person that I loved. My teacher was like, great, everyone, thanks so much. Ashton, you stay after class. She's like, come here, sit in my office. And here comes this thing with light again. She's like, I see something within you that you are holding back. She was like, there's a ball of light within you. And I was like, okay, cool, this is fun, whatever. Like, I keep hearing this thing of like, without my life, and I'm sure many of you all have as well, but I'm like, what is she trying to tell me? Like, what, like, okay, like, what am I gonna, like, oh, cool, I have this ball of light within me, what does that mean? And she was like, this light is your truth, and once you access that, you will be free. And that blew my mind, but I still was like, sheltering, protecting myself, and a bit of an asshole, and I was like, okay, thank you so much. I have to go write a paper now. So I went on, fast forward a few more years. I was going to the beach to celebrate one of my friend's birthdays, and I was like having this crisis of like, yo, again, returning to this light, like, what does this mean to me? And by this point, I was like, I am queer. Like, I love myself. Like, I exist on this like spectrum of like gender and sexuality that is like not completely finite and not against any, like, not sitting on one part of the binary. And my friend was like, all right, girl, get it together. Put on whatever you want. Let's go to the beach and just lay in the sun. I was like, okay. And I wore this like white nightgown, and we were sitting there, and this woman comes across and was like, oh, can I take your photo? And we were like, cool, yeah. She's like, oh, cool, give me your handle stuff. Me not thinking, oh, wait, I haven't like talked to my family in detail about all these things. She's like, cool, we'll tag you. She tagged us. Got some phone calls over and over again. I was like, oh, this is a part of the light that I am sheltering from, you know, this part of my family, this part of the community that I was raised in, that I'm away from now. And I got a call from my mom, and she was like berating me, and I like instantly went into another period of darkness, which we don't need to get into. But I sat on the couch, and I was like speechless. She's like, I didn't raise you this way. You know, you can go do whatever you want to do, blah, 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 but just know that like this is not how you need to be. And I was like, I don't know, I don't think about this right now. I'm like pushed into a corner of darkness, and like, where is this light? Like, how do I explain who I am? And then I had an epiphany. That, oh, this is what I need to give her, that letter. And within that letter, it talked about my professor saying, you know, there's a ball of light within you, and once you access that, you'll access your truth. And I explained to her, you know, like, my queerness is my light, is my truth. To pull us all out of the darkness, we have to access that light. We have to access that truth. Beyond the darkness, all of this darkness that we have is love, is light. And she called me after she received the letter in the mail and was like, I didn't know you felt this way. I didn't know like all the things you said about your body and the way you walk, blah, blah. I didn't know that this was affecting you. I was like, how could you not? But still, she was like, you know, I love you and like, I understand this. And so that was that. And then I was like, okay, how can I make this even more truthful to you, more relevant to you? And I talked to her because she works in a place where she has to deal with a lot of people who are in this institution because of very dark things that happened to her. And I said to her, hey, I was teaching in the South this past summer, and I decided to do a piece that was about darkness and light instead of presenting like a normal song or monologue or something about it. And there was a kid who was transgender, and them and their parents came up to me and was like, thank you for being the light, because it was about to get real dark for them. And we saw it and we knew it. But you coming into the space, spreading that light, opening up the conversation, means a lot for us in this community. And so I explained that to her too, and she was like, okay, I guess I get it now. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of groundwork that we all still need to do, but beyond the darkness is our light, and if we can access our light, we can access our truth.
This, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that Liz is a fashion guru. Yeah. Yes, Liz, making waves for non-binary people in an industry that demands that we not only be categorized, but objectified and sexualized to their standards rather than our own. Liz is setting new standards in the fashion world. Yes. But as a self-described queer elder, you said it, and I loved it. Also, setting the example of what it means to be a dynamic queer person, always curious and excited to grow no matter where we are in our own journey. Please give it up. Warm welcome for Liz.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi. Such a nice energy in here. Thank you for having me, Jordan. Love you, man. All right. I met my first soulmate in 1984. I was 14 years old. She was hanging out with my sister at the time, but I'd been eyeing her. So much brown leather, sexy trim, big snaps. She had broad shoulders, narrow hips. That signature 80s upside-down triangle silhouette that I longed for. We had it all. One day when my sister was out of town, I made her my own. And afterwards, I hid her in my closet. She was a rare, perfect jacket. Tight at the thigh, but somehow blousy at the top. She was pure 80s magic. She was my first feel-good jacket, and I spent the next 30-something years chasing that same high. I never felt safe growing up. I won't get into the novel that was my childhood, but honestly, I didn't really think that I would live long enough to be here on a stage at 49 years old during Pride Month in NYC, especially considering that when I came out to my parents at 15, I just got a hard no and nothing else. But I was still a tomboy, dressed as a pretty princess, taking every chance I could get to feel good in my presentation. Like getting to wear proper tailored jackets riding horses. And during Gender Switch Day of Spirit Week in high school, I got to rock a Wall Street James Spader style suit with suspenders. And every time someone would die, I got to wear my long black suit jacket that covered 70% of my body to the funeral. I remember this one summer, I borrowed my friend's older brother's jacket while he was away. It was acid wash denim, traditional men's Levi's style, total George Michael vibes. And it was almost impossible to give it back. I was always on the search for that one jacket that would finally make me feel like me, which is something up until 4 years ago I had really never felt. I was full-blown dependent on jackets. Convinced it was just a matter of being in the right place at the right time with the right amount of money available on my credit card. And they all went through the same excruciating checklist. Will this jacket give me broader shoulders? Will this jacket give me more narrow hips? Will it hide my D-cup bosoms when I want it to? It wasn't simply about presentation. It was more about protection and preservation. And by the time I turned 40, I was living in a studio apartment on the Upper East Side with a tiny closet full of soulmates. Twill jackets, tweed jackets, leather jackets, pleather jackets, silk jackets, an assortment of denim jackets in various washes, double-breasted jackets, single-button jackets, belted jackets, mesh jackets, sheer jackets, short-sleeve jackets, post-apocalyptic asymmetrical jackets, embroidered jackets, sequin jackets. I was literally living in a studio full of jackets, but still, none of them were quite right. I would double them up, try different combos, buy every single color possible, layers. It just wasn't right, and it just wasn't me. As my dependency on jackets intensified, my romantic relationships with people mostly sucked. Probably because my relationship with myself was in flux, even though I wasn't fully aware of the disconnect at the time. But I was finally consciously leaning into my masculinity. I started owning my natural walk with still hips and wide legs and my shoulders broad. I wore Oxfords and brogues. I let go of my collection of heels. I cut my hair. I stopped wearing makeup. I was drawn to all things butch. I was a fierce advocate for the trans community. I worked as a stylist and a personal shopper, and I was witnessing all these other people have their aha moments in their clothes. And I just kept being like, that's so awesome, that's so great for them. It's never gonna happen for me. You know, some women will just never be happy in their bodies, and I guess I'm just one of them. And then I got good health insurance for the first time in a long time. And with a genetic predisposition to estrogen-fueled cancers, a long history of needing biopsies and MRIs, never knowing if this would be the time that they would say those dreaded words, I opted to get a preventative double mastectomy. And when it came time to discuss reconstruction, it was super clear to me that I really didn't want them back. Yes, it was more pragmatic. Reconstruction can be a longer, more intensive recovery process, but this was something more. I was actually shocked at how indifferent I was to having breasts. I was literally like, no boobs, no problem, man. I had no need for breasts on myself. And don't get me wrong, because I love titties. I just don't want them attached to me. Of course, it took me a full year of trying to convince my surgeon to keep me flat. She was afraid I would later come back, change my mind, and sue her. But I just was like, nope, I demand that flat be on the menu. That surgery was 4 years ago, in June 2015. The recovery was long and arduous and a little complicated, but by week 3, once the drains were out and the swelling had gone down and my stitches were unwrapped, I knew what I had to do. I slowly, with great effort, walked my tired ass to my closet to see all my loves. I grabbed my go-to pinstripe jacket. She was one of my longest relationships. We spent a joyous night together in '97 at a Halloween party where I was dressed like Robert Palmer and my date was dressed like his backup singer. I gingerly put her on, and she no longer fit. It was no longer my jacket, and it wasn't my body. There was this empty space where my D cups used to be. The bus scenes, they just puddled over my chest in a very not sexy way. We didn't belong together anymore. And that was actually perfect. I took off that jacket and I felt safe in that moment. And not just safe from the looming unknown death energy of potential cancer that my breasts had been carrying for so long, but also felt safe just as me, without breasts. And a lot of you are probably listening to this story like, yes, that's what you needed to do to find your truth in your gender identity. And yes, you're right. But also, I didn't know that it was about my gender identity at the time. There was nothing in my emotional or psychological vocabulary up to that point that had challenged my actual gender as part of my self-expression. But there I was, staring at this new body, and I realized that the whole search for that jacket, that chasing that high and trying to find this thing that would make me feel more like me, was maybe me unconsciously advocating for a gender I didn't even know I wanted yet. And I was really grateful for something in me pushing me not to reconstruct. Because taking away my breasts ended up giving me everything my life had been missing. I still have my fair share of jackets, I'm not gonna lie. But now I feel like me when I wear them. And I feel like me when I wear button-downs. And I feel like me when I wear t-shirts. And I feel even more like me on testosterone. And this whole time, I thought I was a big dyke who was just trying to avoid breast cancer. And little did I know, I was actually a trans, masculine, non-binary person who didn't want breasts at all. I met my first soulmate in 1984, but I met my truest, authentic self 4 years ago, and I've never looked back.
I'm not going to share my story just yet, but I am going to tell you a little bit about some of the things that the center has been working on, what I do here at the center, and ways that you can participate. Recently, the center launched an initiative in partnership with Google and Parks Department, which is the Stonewall Forever app. If any of you haven't seen it, it's stonewallforever.org. It's a really great app and a really great resource for anybody in the world to learn a little bit about LGBTQI+ history. If any of you, I've come from a background of working in public programs, and I worked at a museo del barrio before coming here. So it's very important for us to create spaces for voices that might not have the resources or the know-how or the space to showcase their work. So any of you that are interested in partnering or showing your work or leading a workshop or just having a discussion or just saying hi, feel free to reach me. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Eddie. Already. Yes, coming in hot for Eddie Grill Jones. Okay. A media personality and producer. And sometimes I feel like the term media personality is tossed around without a lot of clarity as to the person's personality actually. But considering that the word slay makes itself into nearly every credit on your resume, I would say that your personality speaks for itself. Along with that incredible work, Eddie is also constantly doing work to give voice to the queer Black community and serves as a literal beacon of hope for all LGBTQIA+ people. So thank you and give it up for Eddie. Yes!
Now, you can email me that bio. I will use it. Yes. Yes, I did not send her that. Oh my God, thank you so much. Hello, you all. How are you doing this evening? You doing good? That's what's up. That's what's up. All right, so before we start, we're just going to say 3 things, right? You're going to repeat after me. I am here.
I am here.
I am real.
I am real.
I am present.
I am present.
All right, cool, we're good. Those things are really important. You'll find out why. All right, now I'm Eddie Gerald Jones with an X on the end, and I am from Cleveland, Ohio.
Woo!
Yes. I'm from the Midwest. Is anybody from the Midwest in the building?
Woo!
Yes. Hello. This is a lot more fun, right? So I'm 24 years old, and as you now know, I'm a media personality, which really says a lot to what I've discovered about myself. I grew up in a predominantly African American community, the Black Baptist Church. That's deep. That's deep.
Amen.
Some of you all may or may not know, but when you come from a heavily religious family, gender roles are like the biggest thing. Homosexuality is like not a thing. And they're just like, not here, not now, not today. So when I was about 5 years old, 5 or 6, I was 6. It was the 2000 VMAs. And Britney Spears performed. And yeah, I'm glad you all know it. She had on a nude glitter sequin situation. Okay, and she had the mic, that's when the mic used to come around from here because it was a lot of choreo going on. And I was sitting in my mother's bedroom with my legs crossed, and I'm watching, and she's downstairs watching something. And I don't even know how I turned to the VMAs. Like, I lived a very sheltered life in the beginning. So I'm watching this woman perform, and I'm like, I want to be her. And I was like, but I'm not her, so okay. So we tucked that dream away, and I started to play baseball. I played baseball with a group of guys. I'm no longer friends with them. They didn't do anything to me. I didn't do anything to them, but we're just not friends. And I played baseball, and I just freaking hated it. So I played Little League. I bowled. They took me out of the baseball Little League when I just laid out in left field one day and said, I don't have time for this. I literally laid down in the grass. I said, not me, not today, not in this heat, not today, Satan. And I just laid there. So we'll fast forward a little bit until I was maybe 13, 14, and I kind of started to realize I was different. Like, I didn't just want to be Britney Spears, like, I kind of was Britney Spears, but I didn't know how to, like, get her out of me, so I'm just like, all right, we got some things to figure out. And I looked towards the Bible, I looked towards my friends that I didn't have at the time, I looked at my family members, all that were telling me, don't be too feminine, don't do the pop, that was the dance back in the day, we used to do the pop, they call it twerking now, but I was doing the pop in kindergarten, don't ask me why. Don't ask me why, but that's what I was doing. And, I was told I couldn't do all of these things that felt so natural and felt so real, things that I connected with. But I also was realizing that there were a lot of things that I was not experiencing that still felt natural and that I wanted to connect with. So it was one night, and I was at home, I was in the bed, and my mom heard me crying in my room, and I'm like 13, 14 at the time, and she's like, what in the world could you be crying about going to sleep? Like, that's deep. Like, crying yourself to sleep, that's deep. I get it now that I live in New York City by myself and I pay Brooklyn rent. I get it. I get crying yourself to sleep, but when you're 13, 14, what are you crying yourself to sleep for? So she comes to my room, what's wrong? My mom is so dramatic, if you can't tell. She's so dramatic. She's like, really, what's wrong? What's going on? And I'm like, I can't tell you. And she's like, what are you talking about? Because me and my mom, I was raised in a single parent home. My mom was my best friend, like my ace boom coon. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I can't tell you. And she finally gets me to open up to her. And I'm like, Mom, am I going to hell? And she's even more dramatic. What? What are you talking about? Going to hell? No. What are you talking about? You go to church every Sunday. All of the good things, all of the great things, all of the holy things. And I'm like, no, I just feel like I'm different from everybody, and I think I'm going to hell. I wasn't gonna come out to her in that moment. This isn't like me leading up to my coming out story. Like, I didn't tell her, but I just knew that I was that different, that I could possibly be condemned and have consequences for who I was. So then I kind of get out of that phase. I still didn't really know how to get Britney Spears out of me. I didn't have, I'm like, this is just trapped. And so I couldn't figure that out. I also wasn't experiencing puberty like everybody else. I wasn't having crushes. I wasn't, being a teenager. I was just existing without experiencing, and that's a problem. So when I got in 8th grade, I decided, I'll try some things out. Maybe I'll have a girlfriend. Maybe this is like gonna be the opening of like a million great things in my life. And little did I know, I was forced into this relationship, and it was very, I don't know if you all have seen the movie Norbert, but it was like a Norbert and Rasputin situation.
How you doing?
And she was very forceful in the relationship, and I wanted out. So there was like this joke going around my school that like I was Norbert, she was Rasputia. It was so terrible to do that to children, but that's what happened to me. And this girl right here, raise your hand real quick, Shay. We were in health class, and she used to sit right behind me. I didn't really know who she was. I didn't know if she knew who I was. But one day, she just kept hitting me on like my shoulder and plucking me on the back of my neck. And I turned around and I'm like, leave me alone, girl. And she's like, nope. When you make the girl that I was dating, when you make her leave you alone, I'll leave you alone. So I was like, you don't understand what's going on. So I scooped my desk up, and I'm like, girl, you better leave me alone. And since that day, we've been best friends. My best friend. And that's when I started to experience. I saw someone see me, and it kind of scared the shit out of me. But she saw me, and she was like, what you're doing isn't for you. But I just didn't know that yet. Britney Spears was still deep down inside, okay? So we go on to high school, 9th through 12th grade. I met all of her friends, which are now my best friends. And we would have these fun weekends, like after football games and basketball games, they all cheerleaded. Except for Shay, she ran track, but she ended up being a cheerleader. Work girl. So I would be over their houses, I would try on their cheerleading uniforms, I was doing herkies, I was doing splits, I was fully capable, and I was doing it all and fitting into every garment that they had. It was a lot of fun. I would take that home. This is when I could fit into my mom's size 7. I wear size 10 now. But when I could fit into her size 7 heel, my mother is a high heel connoisseur, a collector. She loves those things. I don't know why. But I used to wear them all over the house. I never played in the makeup because I was like, I can't clean that up. I can't put that back together the way I took it out. But I was starting to explore my gender at a very young age, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I was just doing stuff behind closed doors that I knew I could never do out in the real world. So after that, I graduated, I ran track because I decided, but why not attach something masculine to myself that people can identify me with? Because I don't know how to identify, people don't know how to identify me, but they're talking about me, making fun of me, so let me just give them something to look at, right? I'm not gonna experience and explore myself. I'm just gonna do something for y'all. So I ran track, and that's what people tacked on to me. I was the boy that ran track. And once I graduated, I went to college, and I was on the track team, and I was on the men's track team, which we'll get to that later. I was on the men's track team, and there was a woman on the women's track team, and she just saw straight through me from the beginning. I mean, I'm not the most like butch person in the world. She saw straight through me. And she was talking to her friends, and she was talking to the girls' track team, which Shimona was on, and she said that I was gay. My best friend, being a good best friend, was like, did he say that? Did you hear that from him? Okay, then that's not what the situation is. Just being a friend protecting me because I hadn't revealed that part of myself to anyone. So when I heard that this went down, I gagged. We're like 3 weeks into school, and I'm like, oh my goodness. The girls know I'm gay. This is the problem. I'm like suffocating in my own body, and I'm not understanding what's happening because this is something that I have never experienced. I've experienced people calling me gay, but someone saying that they know. I'm like, well, girl, how do you know? Because I don't even know. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I talked to her. Her name's Bianca, and I spoke with her. And from that moment, I was like, wow, she saw me. This is my chance. This is my opportunity, and I may not get another one. So from that moment on, I won't even say I came out to my university. I just began to experience life from that point. That experience had never happened. It scared me to my core. And that is when I began experiencing. So I would also play in her clothes, because she was from Philadelphia. So she had like this crazy East Coast fashion sense. I mean, we're coming from Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm wearing like 8-inch like stripper heels in her room. I'm putting on like 2-piece outfit sets. This is like before units came around. And I was like, I had a shortcut. So I was just like putting her hair under my hats and like flipping that. And I developed like this weird, all the time whether I had hair on or not, bang move. You know, when you have a bang move. So I always had like this weird like bang thing that I did all the time. No reason at all. No hair. And that is when I began to explore myself in my entirety. I had a fashion show at my school. I was a part of a fashion troupe where we competed against other fashion troupes. I went to an HBCU, so we competed against other HBCUs. So when I started that, there was this one battle, and they were like, "We need you to wear makeup." And I had a friend, she did makeup, and she did my face. And once she put the makeup on my face, I had never played in makeup ever. I only played in my mom's heels. And when she put the makeup on my face, I looked in the mirror and I said, "This is the look." I was like, "This feels right. This is fun. This is me. I'm experiencing myself right now for the first time. I'm feeling a joy, and I'm feeling a safeness and a homeness and a very secure being." I'm like, I feel fully myself. So once I did that show, I ran straight to the drugstore and I bought everything, which up until a few years ago, literally it sucks, but up until a few years ago, it wasn't that much for girls in my complexion, but I bought everything in my complexion that I could possibly blend out, so, which didn't work out. But I started to wear makeup, and makeup was my safe space. I would do it in my room, I would take it off in my room, because I still wasn't comfortable with it. And it was 2016, I had been in school for 4 years, because I did a 5-year program. Yes, I did. It wasn't a 5-year program, I just did 5 years. But either way, I have my degree. And I was the mosquito Barbie for Halloween. It's so cliche. And for Halloween, I decided to get in drag, and I was the black mosquito Barbie, because that's when they had premiered this new line of Barbies. And she was so fab. She had on the 2-piece, the 8-inch stripper heels. And I was like, oh, I already got this. We were practicing this. So I made the outfit from scratch. And I wore it around my entire university, which is the HBCU. And I'm like, this is deep. This is deep, deep. Because everybody here went to a Black Baptist church. And they're looking at me like, what in damnation has risen today? And I got a lot of, oh my God, you look gorgeous. You look beat. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, you were lying. You were lying. You were lying. I was playing makeup for 5 minutes when I decided to do this. And I walked around campus and I just felt like myself. I felt like nobody can stop me. I know I look good. Every 5 seconds was a this, was a that. And it was so natural. It wasn't anything to it. So since that, I wanted to wear heels in my modeling organization. I'm like, well, this is perfect. I'm introducing everyone to who I am. I'm exploring my own gender. I'm kind of going through that teenage phase that girls go through, but a little bit later in life, which was okay. I was fine with it. But they told me, you can't wear heels on the runway. That's not really what we do. We're pretty heteronormative over here. They didn't use that word. That's a word that I use because it's politically correct. They didn't say that. But they told me that I couldn't do that. And I was really questioning their decision because at the same time, I was teaching the girls in my modeling troupe how to walk in heels. So I'm like, this isn't really making sense, but I mean, I'm not gonna fight 30 of you. So, all right, I guess this is what we're doing. And that hurt a lot because I loved what I did. I love heels. I loved all of these things that I had connected with and started to connect with since I was exploring my gender. So we'll fast forward. I graduated in 2017, and I lived in Philly, worked in Philly for a little while, and it was at Fox 29 that I decided I was gonna start wearing makeup and I was gonna start building my television reel. And I didn't want to not present something that was fake, that someone could depend on every day. So I said, well, I like wearing makeup, I like wearing a lash, I like highlighter, I like colors, I love all of that. So why not include that into my reel? Because I would hate to get a job and then show up and leave for some weird, random reason. Not random, not weird at all. They were just very non-inclusive. So I decided I have to start wearing makeup on the job now, and this is really scary because I'm an intern. So I started wearing makeup. Nobody flinched inside of the building, but I'm like, can you see me? Can you tell I have on a lash? Yeah, we can tell you have on a lash. Honey, you have on a lash. So it wasn't a baby lash, I had on a lash. And I got called in to do a man on the street interview, and I'm like, why me? Like, I'm questioning why I was invited into a space, why I was valid, why I was qualified. And they were like, because your personality, your light shines. And I'd never really heard that. And people told me I was funny all the time. I just think I'm real. But they saw me, they experienced me, and they liked it. I didn't know that that's what it was then. I was just like, well, maybe I'm just the only person that answered their phone. So I came in and I did it, and I experienced myself in a realm that I had never seen, and I saw myself back when I went and watched the television. I was like, wow, this is great, this is me. And I didn't think that my voice was weird. I didn't think that I appeared weird. I didn't feel or look uncomfortable. And that's very weird for seeing yourself like on camera for the first time. You're like, no, I don't really want to take a picture. I took all of the pictures. And since then, I've begun to experience who I am as a person. I'm still experiencing who I am as a person. I'm still exploring all of those avenues. About a year and a half ago, I started to learn the terms like genderqueer, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and I was like, let's study some of that because I don't really know what that means. I'm from the Midwest, I already told you all this. So I moved to New York in March, which was a year ago, and that's when I really was able to meet people. I was experiencing amazing things. I was exploring this amazing city that is to be explored, and that's when I was like, I don't really feel like a boy, and I feel like Brittany is finally ready to pump. She's ready to strut her stuff. So I just studied, I talked to people, I experienced people, I played in makeup, I played in hair when I got to this city, and that's when I was like, okay, but Brittany's not the only person in there, I think. So if I have all of these different spirits that live through you and in you and beyond you, we'll get to that. You have to acknowledge them, you have to explore them, you have to love them, feel them, let them feel you, and you have to show them and express them to other people so that people can understand what's going on with you when they see you. So that's exactly what I did. I birthed Brittany, and I was like, she's here. Her real name is Milan. It's not Brittany, but I love me Britney Spears. But when I got to New York, that is when I finally felt like I was in a space that I could let this growth, let this evolution, let myself experience who I really am. And that's where I stand today. I always tell people, and I was just talking to a friend the other night, we have so many spirits within us. It's what you have been allowed to, it's what you feel comfortable exploring, what you feel comfortable putting out to the world. How you present to the world, you can't apologize for. I always try to walk through life as unapologetic as I can, and that is because when we are no longer here, the generations after us, our family members, the youth that we all love so much, that's all we have to do is pass down our experiences and our spirit. The spirit is going to live on forever. And whatever your spirit experiences, that is what's going to be here. So if you experience trauma and sadness and you live in that, that's what you're going to pass on. If you experience loneliness and you stay in that, this is what you're gonna pass on. But if you choose to experience growth and evolution, you'll pass on growth and evolution. If you experience life and love, that is what you're gonna pass down.
Great.
So that is something that I try to do. I tell everyone, bad days are a choice. You know, you can always just choose to make a left, choose to make a right, and make everything different. But I think my story is more so experience yourselves, explore yourself. Gender is on a spectrum, and nobody can tell you that there's a point A or a point B. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, and pick yours, honey. So that's my experience in this world so far, and I'm sure Jordan could probably call me in like 10 minutes and ask me, you can even story to tell. I'm like, child, everything has changed, it's crazy. But that is me, and that is me with my heart on the sleeve, unapologetically. I'm just here to share positivity because that's just what lives within me, and I never let anything negative get me down. And I'm open to explore and evolve, and us as humans, that's the only thing that's constant is change. So
We love you, Eddie.
Growth, live experience. I am here, I am real,
Yes.
and I'm present.
Yes. Love you. Everything else, no, baby.
Yes, you're real present. Our next storyteller is Lisa. And there are some people who you look at and think, where would we as a community be without you? And Lisa is one of those people. Lisa's bar, Henrietta Hudson, has been a celebratory gathering space as well as a place for healing for the entire queer community, and claims the lofty title of being the longest running lesbian bar in the country, I believe, which is an epic thing to claim. Let's like give it up for like small business owners who are queer, who have things like the longest running lesbian bar in the country. Thank you. And it's amazing how opening a bar as a queer person means that you are also volunteering yourself to be a community organizer by default. But here you are, standing here just like your bar, and I am so excited for you to tell your story. Everyone, give it up for Lisa.
Yeah, so I landed in the West Village March of 1985. I was 22 years old and I was going to college. I was going to St. John's University studying psychology. And I needed a bartending job to put me through college. Because back then you could actually just have one job and go to college and have an apartment and a car. So it was pretty cool, yeah. Anyway, I was bartending on Wall Street during the Wolf of Wall Street days. If you've seen the film, that was not exaggerated. It was that obscene and excessive, and it was great for a little while. But it was kind of getting to me, so I was like, you know what, I think I want to work in the Village. So back then, you picked up the Village Voice, which was a newspaper, at midnight on Tuesday, because that's when they drop them, and you looked at the classifieds. I know this sounds very archaic, but that's how we did it. And I grabbed the Voice, and I saw a job on like 519 Hudson Street. And I was really excited, and after my shift on Wall Street, I went up to the Village, and I walked in, and the guy was so happy to meet me, and he's, wow, I'd love to hire you, but you just look too young. Which, it was like a fancy tablecloth restaurant. And I was really upset, and I walked out, and I was feeling very defeated. And I walked down Hudson Street to go back to the subway, to go back to Brooklyn, and the sky opened up. It just started pouring rain. And I ran into some just random bar to get out of the rain. That's Henrietta Hudson today. So, yeah, if it didn't rain that day, I wouldn't be here. You guys would probably be here. So I ran into the bar. It's 438 Hudson Street, and at the time it was the cubby hole. It was the original cubby hole. It was half the size of Henrietta's. I popped in. The bartender was this really cool, dyke, this big dyke. Her name was Jeannie Bradwin. She was super friendly, and, honey, what are you doing out in the rain, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I told her what I was doing. She goes, well, we're looking for a bartender. And I met the manager, and I got hired on the spot. And I kept my job on Wall Street because I needed the money. And they'd given me Monday night and Saturday afternoons, slowest shifts in the market. And I said, no problem, I'll take them. And then I did everything. And within like literally 2 months, they moved me up to the best shifts because I'm good at what I do. And people who worked there, they were upset because they got fired, but whatever. So, it was really easy. I just put all the money in the register. You know, it wasn't really rocket science. But I got to meet people. Like I worked. My partner behind the bar was this woman named Dee Meadows, who was the first woman to ever be hired in a gay bar in New York City when the mob ran them. I mean, she was just like so dapper, and she had a boutique on Bleecker Street in the '60s, and she taught, like, we were both Scorpios, and you know, like, so I think she was like my dad's age, and then it was me. I was 22, but the person that really made the most impact on me. So I worked Monday night, and I had my bouncer. Her name was Stormy Delagrier. And Stormy, this is Stormy. She was a dear friend of mine. And, you know, when my mom first heard I was working in the Village, in the bar, she was like, because, you know, the Wall Street job, I was home early, you know. Also, I had my own apartment at 19. You could do that back then. Nobody stayed home. Everybody just moved out. My mom met Stormy, and she said, I will never worry about my daughter working nights again. So Stormy was 65 when I met her, and she was the bouncer at Cubbyhole. And, you know, Monday nights would be really quiet, but we had to stay open until 4 a.m. And I would study my psychology books from 1 o'clock to like 3. And then Stormy would tell me stories about her life at the end of the night. And well, she's a fascinating woman, and I'm dedicating my time to Stormy's story. So she lived at the Chelsea Hotel. So when we closed at night, I would drive her up to the Chelsea Hotel, jump on the FDR, and go back to Brooklyn. But we became fast friends. We were really very connected. So Stormy's story goes something like this. She was born in New Orleans, Christmas Eve, 1920. Her mom was black, her dad was white, which was not, you know, was frowned upon, of course. But her mom was a domestic for this family, and the man of the house left his whole family for Stormy's mom. So it was even more scandalous. Stormy was born, she was very light-skinned, and so like the black kids didn't really want to hang out with her, and the white kids would eat her up all the time, and she was like left hanging on a fence. I mean, she lived to the day she died from a wound like that. She loved singing, and I say she because that's how she identified with me. Like, she told me her story because her story evolved. So singing was what freed Stormy, but when she sang, when she was younger and in the South, she had to wear women's clothes because that's just what you had to do, and that was what freed her. Well, she got to the point where she really just had to break out. So she moved to Chicago and she worked for the mob. And in slim-fitting suits and, you know, so dapper, beautiful. Met the love of her life, a dancer, professional dancer named Diana. And they lived basically as husband and wife. Stormy didn't identify as trans. Stormy was non-binary. Stormy was like, to me, she had like a real David Bowie spirit. You know, she just kind of lived in the middle. She didn't choose either side of the coin. And Diana passed away. Stormy moved to New York and met these two guys who founded the Jewel Box Review. Now, the Jewel Box Review was what inspired La Cage aux Folles. Now, these two gay guys started the Jewel Box Review because they wanted to travel all over the world and meet other gay folks. And you couldn't because everything was so underground. Now, the Jewel Box had, I believe, 34 female impersonators and this really handsome MC. Stormy was the MC. So she was the first drag king, international drag king. And at the beginning of the show, they would call out to the audience like, listen, pay attention. We want you to tell us when the show is over who's the real woman. And they would, of course, look at all the, you know, female impersonators trying to figure out, and then it would be revealed it was Stormy, and they would just like gasp, you know. So it's so interesting because, you know, I met Stormy in 1985 and Stonewall was in 1969. Now there's been a lot of confusion about who threw the first punch at Stonewall. Well, I can tell you it was Stormy, unequivocally. And it's, you know, there's a guy that works at the Stonewall Inn now named Tree. Everybody kind of knows Tree. Tree's 80 years old and bartends there. Tree was at the Stonewall Inn, saw the punch. Okay? So this is what happened. A lot of people don't know that, well, a lot of people aren't just aware of the fact that the night of the Stonewall Rebellion was the night Judy Garland died that day. A lot of people don't know that little fun fact. Now, Judy Garland, of course, was a huge gay icon. I mean, we've always had icons, right? And it was hot, and everybody was upset. Judy Garland died, right? And everybody was commiserating. And they went to the Stonewall. Stormy went to the Stonewall. At the time, Stormy was emceeing for the Jukebox Review. This beautiful, slim-fitting suit, and she had a very thin mustache at the time. And what the cops would do when they went in, they wanted to always up the charges. So they would go in with drugs in their pockets and throw them on the floor. And say, you step on that, you step, they wanted a footprint on it, right? To just, you know, up the charges. You're gay and you have drugs, right? Okay, so the cop said to Stormy, step on that. And Stormy had a very baritone voice. She said, no. And the cop grabbed her arm and she knocked the cop out with one punch. And it took 2 cops to carry that cop out. And, you know, as they say, the rest is history, right? I mean, it went on for 3 days. So Stormy, it's just funny, I think like now, I only met Stormy 16 years after Stonewall. That's not really that long if you think about it, right? Because I was 85. And she would tell me these stories late at night. So you can't really Google Stormy story, right? So I got a phone call in April of 2012. Stormy broke her arm and went to St. Vincent's Hospital. And St. Vincent's closed and Stormy never came back. So she basically disappeared, right? So I made a couple of phone calls and I found that she was diagnosed with dementia and that the state took custody of her and farmed her out to just like a random social service agency. And I tried to get access to Stormy through that agency and they denied me access because I wasn't a blood relative. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to Congressman Nadler, who now is the head of the judiciary, you know, investigating the person in the White House. And he put me in touch with an attorney, and I petitioned the city and the state, and I got legal guardianship of Stormy. Wow. So they just all ran full circle. So like the last 4 years of her life, I got to take care of Stormy. Stormy brought me so much joy. People would say, wow, Stormy was so lucky. You know, I was the lucky one. So I just wanted to honor this person this month. Thanks.
I am grateful to be a part of a community like this who understands that all of those things are intersectional and that we as a community fight for queerness, but we also fight for every single other person that needs to be fought for. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight with all of you and so happy to walk out that door and to spend this Pride Month thinking about how I exhaust myself, but also how I bring myself joy and how I take care of the people around me so that we do not get resistance fatigue, but instead feel empowered and emboldened to resist further and deeper and stronger and more powerfully than ever. Your stories are everything. And I'm so grateful that you let me have this stage with you tonight to hear them and to introduce you. It has been my great, deep honor.
Thank you so much for hosting and for being here and moving the night along. And for bearing your heart. If anybody gives me a stage and a microphone, I talk way too long. So I'm gonna do my best to keep it short. Yeah. Somebody just like wave their hand when I start rambling. Put your hand down. I'm not rambling. I just wanted to give a few quick thank yous. First, thank you so much to the speakers for being here and for sharing your story. This is the newest crop of stories that are on VideoOut's platform. There's somebody here tonight who's one of the very first storytellers we have on the platform, Barbara Abrams, who's sitting here in the third row. Barbara's an incredible force in the community. She's got her pride pocket square in, looking so dapper. So if you've not met Barbara, please come meet Barbara. And then go watch Barbara's story on videout.org. Each of you have a story, like Amy was saying, your stories are everything. I just want to tell one very, 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 very quick story about the power of our stories. I'll tell about my dad, who when I came out told me that I was brainwashed, that I was broken, and that I was hellbound. And I didn't know what to say to that. He was my dad, right? What do you say to your dad when he tells you you're broken? So I kept being myself and fled to New York as quickly as possible. And how unfortunate is that we have to leave our home just to be who we are. So what we're doing now is creating an arsenal of stories to use as local advocacy tools. So when we travel around the country, when we go to Hueytown, or when we go to Pierre, South Dakota, or El Paso, Texas, or to the Midwest, or anywhere else in the country, we want to hear real stories told by real people. So we give those stories back to organizations that we partner with so that they have stories that they can use locally with their communities. And they can change things on the local level. Local. And then all those stories are also part of the library. I've been sharing those stories ever since we started collecting them back with my dad. And I've sent him articles and whatever. Well, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, my dad called me and he said, "Jor." My dad doesn't sound like that, but when I impersonate him, I always use that voice. "Jor, I just want to let you know that if anybody tries to take your rights away, I'll be the first one to stand up for you."
Wow.
That's my dad.
Yes, Dad.
He told me I was broken, and now he's like, "You're not broken, I'll stand up for you." I went home, my dad was like, "Did you hear the Boy Scouts changed their name? Now they're just the Scouts. Well, when I was a kid, boys were boys and girls were girls." And I was like, "Dad, blah, blah, blah." Like, I ended up getting out of the car, I slammed the door. We're like driving through downtown Birmingham, and I just get out of the car and slam the door. My dad's like honking the horn at me, and I'm like, I wanted to flip him off, but I still have some sensibility, so I didn't. And later that night, when my dad had called and texted me about 1 billion times, I said, "Look, you either have to accept that people are people, or you and I are never going to have the kind of relationship that I want us to have." So I came back to New York, and about 2 weeks later, my dad called and said, "Well, I watched Katie Couric's documentary on gender, and I'm for trans rights too." So our stories are so powerful, and we have to use them here. We have to use them in New York, but we also have to use them back home. How many of you were born and raised in New York? Okay, well, that's actually an inaccurate representation of the point is, for those of us who weren't born and raised here, we can take our stories back home. And even those of you who were born and raised here, your stories can be beacons of hope for those who have none. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Selena and Laura in the back for managing the food and the drinks. Thank you so much to Richard and the center. Please follow VideoOut and support the work that we're doing. It really is meaningful for me that you all have been here tonight. Thank you so much. I love you all. Have a great evening.